and project, but with a lot of potential, especially as we look forward to the 250th. We're really very interested in finding out more and more about the individuals who made all these, just made the new world that, or the new nation that was going to come together. And they're not the famous people who are on the money or at the Declaration of Independence and so on. Who are all these people, and where did they come from, and what did they do? Sarah, would you like to make the introduction?
Yep, absolutely. So I am happy to introduce Kelly. She was a collections intern this summer, and she's a senior studying history at Messiah University. And this summer, I was talking to Kelly, trying to figure out what kind of internship best suits her goals. And she's already worked in collections, she's already done interpreting, and she has aspirations to go further with graduate school studying history. So I kind of thought she was ready, and obviously I was right, for kind of a rabbit hole research project.
Oh.
So what she's is research, not, and can everyone hear me?
You're breaking up.
It's breaking up.
Oh no, okay. Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. We're having issues in Love it looks like too. I don't know.
We may have to switch to Kelly.
Audio too.
Let's go right to Kelly.
Kelly.
So,
Kelly.
thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Could you please turn on your mic and
Hello.
tell us? Thank you.
So my name is Keli Ganey, and just like Sarah said, I was doing research for the Old Barracks this past summer, and when she approached me with this topic, it was a very interesting one. She asked me to find either any kind of woman who was either indentured or enslaved right before or leading up to the revolution, and if they were able to run away to the revolution, and looking at why did they make it, a bunch of different research questions. And so it's a little bit outside of my research field background, so I was very excited to dive into something new. And so I was looking into new databases and everything. So without further ado, I will share my screen now, because I put together a little presentation for everybody. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes, looks good.
All right, cool. Awesome. I love it when things work correctly.
Yes. Yep.
So I titled my presentation for this, The Lost Tales of Revolutionary Freedom Seekers. And so the revolutionary period of America brought many opportunities for those living in the colonies to rise to new positions, status, or more importantly, for the people who we are discussing this evening, the possibilities to escape to freedom. Many indentured servants and enslaved people made attempts to flee bondage during the American Revolution. Everyone was focused on the war or trying to keep food on the table, which made it slightly easier to slip out from underneath watchful eyes. Some freedom seekers chose to simply run away as far as they could and try to establish a new life for themselves. Many of them would go on to change their names and take up an occupation to establish their necessity to a town.
Recording in progress.
Ooh, cool. To establish an occupation in a town and not to appear as wanderers. Other freedom seekers ran to the army, both continental and British. Along with the army was a sense of economy and a loose promise of protection. For men, the army provided a paying job that is constantly moving, so it's harder to be caught. For women, they also had opportunities to be nurses or do laundry to make small amounts of money to help provide for their families. The University of Pennsylvania notes that the Second Continental Congress heeded George Washington's advice to establish a means of caring for wounded and sick soldiers, authorized the formation of hospitals. Nurses were not always easy to hire, so Washington blamed the low compensation rate, which was originally $2 a month for nurses. Congress then increased the pay for nurses to $4 a month in 1776, and then a year later to $8 a month. At the beginning of my internship at the Old Barracks Museum, I was asked to research potential narratives of females who ran away to the Revolution to see if they had any connections to the barracks, which I have not been able to discover any potential women directly linked back to the barracks, but I have been able to find potential women that fit that narrative of running away and being able to start a new life for themselves. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. So with war comes opportunities. It has the opportunity to acquire status through military or political positions, to make profit off of the necessities of war, new markets and trade relationships are established, but just like I was talking about for ours, is escaping bondage. So let's see, can I make that smaller? Cool. So I want to make sure everybody can see all the words.
Mm-hmm.
I spent about a month going through books of runaway ads from the Pennsylvania Gazette, the Pennsylvania Evening Post, and books titled Smooth Tongue and Deceitful, White New Jersey Runaways by Joseph Lee Boyle, and Had On and Took With Her, Clothing in Female Runaway. Clothing in Female Runaway Servant advertisements from the Pennsylvania Evening Post. Why can't I go backwards? There it is. Aha. There we go. All right. So that last one was by Sue Heskin and Karen Mullen. So I went through a couple thousand ads, and within the masses, I found about 5 narratives that have been lost to time until now. I will preface that my research is not fully complete, and when working with lost narratives, one must have great patience when researching numerous dead ends. However, what I have found so far has great potential for the beginning of a conversation about female runaways and their undocumented bravery. So the women that we will be looking at tonight were all found in the Pennsylvania Evening Post. And so, as you can see, we have Lena Kimmy, Jeanette Stenson, Ann Powell, one woman who was not given a name in her advertisement, and then a family of African Americans of a man by the name of Joe, and then it was written that he had a wife and a 2-month-old child with him. So the one woman I was able to trace down the most information about was Lena and her husband, Andrew. Lena and Andrew are first mentioned in a runaway advertisement located in the Pennsylvania Evening Post on June 3rd, 1777. I started by cross-referencing the last name of Kimmy with the muster rolls of the Pennsylvania 5th Regiment and found and enlisted Andrew Kimmy under Benjamin Bartholomew's company. Andrew enlisted on either May 7th or 8th, I do have conflicting resources that have shown both dates, of the year 1777. The most logical reasoning is that Andrew ran first to make sure he could enlist and have a place for Lena to run to. You can find his enlistment records in Volume 3 of the Continental Line, 5th Pennsylvania Regiment series on pages 46 through 81. In catalogs in the National Archives, I found records of Andrew being sick in hospital. From August 7th, 1777 to December 10th, 1777. One theory I had was that Andrew was sick during the winter of Valley Forge in 1777. But after reaching out to the archives at Valley Forge, nothing could be found of Andrew or Lena. Other records show that Andrew was sick in the hospital from September 6th to October 10th, which rules out him being injured in the Battle of Brandywine on September 16th. The Society of Cincinnati Manuscripts has records of Revolutionary flying hospitals, and on the one page that has the Pennsylvania 5th Regiment was sadly torn out of the book, so I wasn't able to cross off to see if he was in one of those flying hospitals. It is also noted that Andrew is back on duty in November 4th, 1777, and again on August 3rd, 1778. There is a note of his return in September on the 9th in 1778, and Andrew then went back on duty in November 16th, 1778. Throughout his time serving, I have noted that he was being paid for his service. So, this is Lena's runaway ad that has her original advertisement that gave me the information of her husband, and where he ran to enlist. For Andrew's noted payments, let's see. This is Andrew's timeline that I have of being sick in the hospital and then returning to duty on record for payment, and then his last payment and what he received. So he received pay on January 1st, October 2nd, October 9th, November 7th, and November 16th, all in the year 1778. He continued serving and being paid during 1779, but only being paid on May 5th. There were 2 last payrolls listed for April of 1780 and then November 10th of 1784. While serving in the Army, Andrew did receive a blanket, shoes, and 1 pair of overalls during his time of service. There is nothing noted in the National Archives of either extra pay or rations for a spouse or companion. Andrew is listed as being in Valley Forge from March 3rd through April 2nd in 1778. This would be my next lead to re-follow up at the Archives of Valley Forge for any records of Kimmy being stationed there during that time. He was also then known to be stationed at Millstone from February 24th through April 14th, 1779, which is another possible lead to follow. The purpose of following these leads on Andrew is that the hope of there's some documentation of his wife being with him. The biggest hope is that she enlisted herself also to receive pay. Linda Grant DePauw from George Washington University wrote in an article titled The Revolutionary War Experience, Women in Combat. And in this journal article, she estimates that the women's branch of the Continental Army may have been 20% the size of the regular male Continental force in service. Over the course of the entire war from 1775 to 1783, the best guess is that 20,000 individual women served, enlisted as women of the Army. With this large number of enlisted women separate from women who simply followed the Army, Lena hypothetically could have been included in that number of enlisted women. Another lead to check would be smallpox inoculation records to see if, when, or where Andrew got inoculated upon his entrance into the Army. It should be noted that there's a lot to uncover about this story, and I intend to do so over time. The other names found in the wanted advertisements have been for the most part untrackable. I have not been able to find any record of them or any connections to them. The next most permissible lead is Jeanette Stenson for her correlation with Thomas Cook. Thomas Cook was a well-documented and known to have kept diaries, and it would be interesting to get my hands on them to see if he records any encounter with Jeanette. Anne Powell was also a dead end due to the fact that I was not able to track down her master to see if he kept even records of his servants. If I was able to obtain those records, I would have been able to decipher if Anna actually got away or if she was captured and a reward was paid. There's no trace of a woman by the name of Anne Powell living in or around King's Philadelphia during this revolutionary period. I still hope that her master can theoretically be tracked, and if his records are able to be found, there is a likelihood of a story that Anne could be a part of. The nameless woman and family of freedom seekers were the hardest to track since their lives weren't recorded. I tried researching the women's multiple masters to see if there was a record of a person that fit her description and during the time period. I had a great difficulty trying to find these records of the men themselves eventually and put a pin in it for a future time. For the enslaved man named Joe and his record wife and child, I turned to archival sites designated to find African American ancestors, more specifically those who had been enslaved. The sites proved to be a dead end since I didn't have enough information about Joe and his family themselves, and it was being an early time period and not coming from a plantation. I then turned to the 2nd Pennsylvania Regiment records to search for discharge papers of William Nelson, which these papers the family allegedly stole and most likely assumed the identity of William Nelson on their run. So these are a few artifacts that I've found of Andrew being enlisted. So you can see, it's kind of hard to see here, which is why I put an arrow, but his name is listed here. This is his main list here. And then here he is again right here. And then we have another one for him being here. And this one, he's noted to be on duty. So this is a blown up version of what I'd be looking for throughout the archival records of him being on duty. And there we got another example. All right, William Nelson. I found William Nelson, and he was ranked as a private in the PA 2nd Regiment and Battalion with scattered dates of service, including from May 1777 to August 31st, 1777. He potentially could be the same William as the discharge papers noted in the advertisement. I also happened to find a William Nelson from PA who served in the 5th Battalion from December 1775 to 1783, which makes him another potential candidate to look into. I did find his manuscript grouped on file in the Pennsylvania State Archives, which makes him my next research project to go and do. There's a small possibility of Nelson and Joe being connected. A fellow researcher, Ann Wayne from the Harrisburg DAR chapter, reached out to me with information from their Patriot database, noting Nelson as the master of Joe and his family. If I can prove this to be true, this particular narrative got a whole lot more complex. However, I've not been able to find any trace of that and have been in contact with Anne to try and retrace her steps to see where she got her information from. So these are the two main artifacts that I found for William. He's here listed as a private, and then this is his private card from the Pennsylvania 2nd Regiment. When I started this research, I knew nothing about the women in this time, and I mostly studied medieval European history or abolitionist history, so this was kind of outside my wheelhouse, which was the most intriguing part of it all. Over time, I developed a deep passion to find these women. I nicknamed my project the Ghost Stories Project because of the lack of documentation about these women's lives. These ghost stories bring to life all of the women considered property instead of people. This research is important for understanding of societal dynamics and of how individuals saw the American Revolution, more specifically, the Army as a source of freedom. I hope that my research encourages others to begin the journey of piecing back together the lives and narratives of these courageous women who took a risk to seek freedom. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I try to jump in and explain the project just a little bit more because I got cut off.
Recording
If I get cut off again, I will stop.